The envelope was waiting for me on the kitchen counter when I got home from the hardware store. White, standard school district stationery, my address printed in that familiar Arial font they've used for 15 years. I set down the bag of cabinet hinges and picked it up, already smiling. Leo, my son, 17 years old, and finally getting his act together. I'm not the kind of father who hovers. I don't check his homework every night or demand to see his test scores. I raised him to be independent, to take responsibility for his own success. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried this semester. Last year was rough. Mediocre grades, missed assignments, that whole incident with the vice principal about his attitude problem. But this fall, something changed. He left for school every morning at 7:30, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. He came home at 4, went straight to his room, stayed quiet. No complaints from teachers, no calls from the office. I thought, he's finally maturing. He's figured it out. I opened the envelope standing right there at the counter. Didn't even take off my jacket. The paper slid out crisp and clean, still smelling faintly of printer toner. Northwood High School, semester progress report. Student, Leo Vance. Advanced Calculus, A. Physics 2, A. English Literature, A. U.S. History, A. Computer Science, A. Spanish 3, A. I actually laughed out loud. Perfect. Not a single B. Not even an A-. My phone was already in my hand. I pulled up our text thread, mostly me sending him reminders about dinner or asking him to pick up milk on his way home, and typed, "Just saw your grades. Incredible work. Let's go out this weekend. Your choice. So proud of you." I sent it, set the phone down, poured myself a glass of water, and stood there at the sink looking out at the backyard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed another coat of stain. Small things. Manageable things. Life was good. The phone rang 6 minutes later. The caller ID said Northwood High. "Mr. Vance?" The voice was male, tired, with that particular flatness that comes from making difficult phone calls all day. "Speaking. This is Principal Henderson. I'm calling about your son, Leo." I was still smiling. "Is this about his report card? Because I just saw it. Looks like he's really turned things around." Silence. Not the good kind. The kind that makes your stomach drop before your brain even catches up. "Mr. Vance," Henderson said slowly, "I'm not calling about his grades. I'm calling because Leo has not attended a single class in the last 8 weeks. I actually laughed. It was a reflex. The sound you make when someone says something so absurd, your brain rejects it outright. "That's not possible. He leaves for school every morning at 7:30. "I'm sure he does, but he hasn't been attending classes since October 1st. We've sent multiple notices to your home address. We've left voicemails. I have documentation here showing—" Wait. I set down the glass. Water sloshed over the rim. "I just received his report card. It's right here. Straight A's. How could he—" "That report card is fraudulent, Mr. Vance." Henderson's voice sharpened. "We're currently investigating how it was generated, but I can assure you, we did not issue that document. Your son's official grades are all marked incomplete due to non-attendance. He's facing potential expulsion." The kitchen felt smaller. The walls pressed in. I looked at the report card still sitting on the counter. The perfect A's lined up like soldiers. "That's impossible," I said again, but the word came out weaker this time. "I see him every day. He leaves for school. He comes home. He's in his room studying." "Mr. Vance, I understand this is difficult to hear, but we have attendance records from all 6 of his teachers. He has not been in class since the beginning of October. We need you to come in immediately to discuss—" I hung up. My hand was shaking. I stared at the phone like it had bitten me, then looked back at the report card. The paper felt heavier now, wrong somehow, like it was contaminated, fraudulent. Leo's bedroom was upstairs, second door on the left. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The door was closed. It's always closed. Leo likes his privacy, always has, even when he was younger. I knocked once habit, then pushed it open without waiting for an answer. The room was pristine. That should have been my first clue. 17-year-old boys don't keep pristine rooms. But Leo's bed was made, corners tucked in with almost military precision. His desk was clear except for a closed laptop and a small desk lamp. The carpet showed fresh vacuum lines. His closet door was shut. The air smelled like laundry detergent, and that cheap body spray teenagers think makes them smell like adults. I stood in the doorway, my heart hammering against my ribs. The backpack was sitting next to his desk chair, dark blue canvas, frayed at the bottom corners, one strap held together with duct tape. He'd had it since sophomore year. I'd watched him sling it over his shoulder every morning for 2 years. I crossed the room in 3 steps and grabbed it. Heavy, way too heavy for someone who supposedly wasn't going to class. I unzipped the main compartment. No textbooks, no notebooks, No crumpled handouts or forgotten gym clothes. Instead, clothes. Neatly folded t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, underwear, socks, all rolled tight like you'd pack for a trip where space mattered. A phone charger, a portable battery pack, a Ziploc bag with toiletries, travel-sized shampoo, deodorant, toothbrush still in its package. My hands were shaking harder now. I pulled everything out, spreading it across his bed like evidence at a crime scene. At the bottom of the bag, tucked into a canvas pocket, I found a folder. Not the cheap paper kind from the school supply aisle. This was a real folder, the kind with multiple compartments and a zipper closure. I opened it. The first page was a printed spreadsheet, rows and columns, dates and numbers, all color-coded, budget projections, living expenses, currency exchange rates. The second page was a map, a city I didn't recognize, sections highlighted in yellow, certain streets marked with small red X's. The third page was a list of addresses, apartments, rental agencies, contact information. The fourth page made my stomach drop through the floor. Visa requirements, extended stay, valid for 90 to 180 days. Documentation needed, valid passport, proof of funds, return ticket, or proof of onward travel. There was more. A printout about youth hostels, a handwritten list of what looked like job prospects, tutoring, freelance coding, remote work, a folded paper with phrases written in another language, phonetic pronunciations scribbled underneath. And then, in the smallest pocket, I found it. His passport, navy blue, slightly bent at the corners. I opened it. His photo stared back at me, taken 2 years ago, when we thought we might take a family trip that never happened. He looked younger in the picture, less certain. Behind the passport was a single sheet of paper, folded twice. I unfolded it. Flight confirmation. Passenger, Leo Vance. Flight 2847. Departure 11:30 a.m. today. Destination international. Type 1. Way. I looked at my watch. 11:14 a.m. I sat down hard on his desk chair. The passport and ticket were still in my hands. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing, trying to make it make sense, but every thought fractured before it could form completely. He's leaving. In 16 minutes, he's leaving. I could call the airport. I could call the police. I could get in my car right now and drive where? I didn't even know which airport. There were 3 within an hour's drive. My eyes landed on a notebook sitting under his laptop. Small, leather-bound, the kind you'd use for a journal. I'd never seen Leo keep a journal. He wasn't the type. Too practical, too focused on what was next, to waste time documenting what already happened. I pulled it out and opened to the last entry. The handwriting was as neat, controlled. The letters sharp and precise, like architectural drafting. November 19th. Dad will see the report card today. He'll smile. He'll text me. He'll feel proud. That was the point. The 4 buys me 2 more months of silence. 2 more months where he doesn't ask questions, doesn't check, doesn't look too close. I know what he'll say when he finds out. He'll say, I'm throwing away my future. He'll say, I'm being reckless. He'll say, I don't understand what I'm doing. But I do understand. I've been planning this for 11 months. Not 2, 11. The report card was just the final piece. I taught myself basic server security, found the vulnerability in the school's grading system, created the document. It's not even hard if you know where to look. Dad taught me that to find problems, exploit weaknesses, create solutions. He just never thought I'd apply it to this. I'm not running away. That's what he'll think, but that's wrong. Running implies panic, implies escape. This is the opposite. This is walking towards something instead of waiting for life to happen to me. He won't understand. He spent 17 years trying to mold me into a version of success he recognizes. College, career, safe trajectory. But I don't want safe. I want real. The flight leaves at 11:30. I'll be gone before he even thinks to check my room. By the time he realizes, I'll be 30,000 feet up. And there won't be anything he can do except decide whether he's proud or disappointed. I hope it's proud, but I'm not counting on it. The entry ended there. No signature, no closing thought. I flipped back through the pages. The earlier entries were shorter, more practical. Lists of things to research, calculations of how much money he'd need, timelines for obtaining documents. It read less like a diary and more like a project plan. One entry from August caught my eye. Dad asked me today what I wanted to study in college. I said, computer science, because that's what he wants to hear. The truth is, I don't want to study anything. I want to live. I want to see what happens when you stop planning every step and just exist in a place where nobody knows your name. He wouldn't get it. He's a planner. Everything in his life is organized, controlled, predictable. That's why Mom left. She told me once, before she stopped calling, that living with him was like living in a blueprint. Everything designed, nothing spontaneous. I don't blame him for being who he is, but I can't be that. I can't spend the next 4 years in lecture halls studying theories when I could be out there learning by doing. 2 more months, then I'm gone. I closed the notebook. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, cold, numb. The watch on my wrist read 11:19. I could still stop him. The thought sat in my mind like a stone, heavy, immovable, true. I could call the airline, report a minor traveling without parental consent. I could call airport security. I could get in my car and drive. And maybe I'd get there in time to intercept him before he went through security. I could stop him. But sitting there in his empty room, surrounded by the evidence of 11 months of planning, I realized something that made my chest tighten and my throat close up. He didn't want to be stopped. This wasn't some impulsive teenage rebellion. This wasn't a cry for help or an act of defiance born from anger. This was methodical, intelligent, thought out with the kind of precision I'd spent years trying to teach him. He'd hacked into the school system. He'd forged a report card so convincing I never questioned it. He'd researched visa requirements, budgeted expenses, planned contingencies. He'd learned enough of another language to survive. He'd saved money. I had no idea how much or from where, but he'd saved it. He'd obtained a passport. He'd booked a one-way flight. He'd done all of it without me noticing a single thing. My son wasn't failing. He was succeeding at something I never taught him to pursue. I thought about the last 2 months. The way he'd left every morning at 7:30, backpack over his shoulder. Where'd he been going? The library? Coffee shops? Just walking around the city planning his exit? I thought about the way he'd come home every afternoon at 4 and gone straight to his room. I'd assumed he was studying, but he was probably researching, booking hostels, emailing potential employers, learning how to survive in a place where he knew no one and had no safety net. I thought about all the conversations we'd had this fall. How many times had I asked him about school? How many times had he smiled and said fine or good, or given me some vague answer I accepted because I wanted to believe him? How many times had I not asked at all? The watch read 11:23. I stood up, put the passport and ticket back in the backpack, zipped it closed, returned it to its spot next to the desk chair. I walked out of his room and closed the door behind me. I went downstairs to my office, the small room off the kitchen I use for paperwork and bills. I sat down at my desk, pulled out my phone, and called the school back. Principal Henderson answered on the second ring. "Mr. Vance, I'm glad you called back. We really need to discuss." "I just spoke with Leo," I said. My voice sounded normal, calm. It surprised me. "He's participating in an independent study program. I should have informed you earlier. That's my mistake." Silence on the other end. Then, "Mr. Vance, I'm not sure I understand. We have no record of any approved independent study. It's a private program. He's working with a mentor on an advanced project. I have the documentation here. I'll email it to you by end of day." "Sir, falsifying school records is a serious—" "I'll handle it, Principal Henderson. Leo's my son. His education is my responsibility. I'll send you the paperwork." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. I felt like I was watching myself from a distance, observing some other version of me make these decisions. I opened my banking app, checked Leo's account. I'd set up a joint account for him when he turned 16, something for emergencies and gas money. The balance was $847, not nearly enough. I transferred $5,000. The confirmation screen loaded. Transfer complete. I set the phone down. The house was quiet. Outside, a car drove past. Somewhere down the street, someone was mowing their lawn. Normal sounds. A normal day. Except my son was on a plane, flying away from everything I'd tried to build for him. I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. The weeks after, the first 3 days were the hardest. I kept expecting him to walk through the door, kept listening for the sound of his footsteps on the stairs, the click of his bedroom door closing. Every time I walked past his room, I had to fight the urge to open it, to check if maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. But the room stayed empty. Principal Henderson called twice more. I told him the same thing. Independent study, private program, I'd send documentation. He stopped calling after the second time. I assume he filed whatever report he needed to file and moved on. Teachers have too many students to chase down one who isn't causing problems. The school never asked for the documentation. I never sent it. On the 4th day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Made it. Safe. Sorry I didn't say goodbye." I stared at that message for 20 minutes before I responded. "Glad you're safe. Be smart." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "I will. Thank you for the money." "You knew?" I checked my account at the airport. Figured it was you. I typed and deleted 4 different responses before settling on. "Call if you need anything." "I will." He didn't. 1 month later, December came. The hardware store put up Christmas decorations. My neighbors strung lights across their porches. I bought a small tree, set it up in the living room, and then realized I had no reason to decorate it. I got another text on December 18th. "Found a job. Tutoring kids in English. Pays enough for rent plus food. That's good. How's the city? Cold. Different. Good. Different. You're staying safe? Yes, Dad. I smiled at that. Even halfway across the world, he still sounded like a teenager annoyed by his father's concern. Proud of you, I typed. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Really? Really? No response after that. But 2 hours later, he sent me a photo. It was taken from what looked like a small apartment balcony. The city stretched out below him, lights twinkling in the early evening dark. In the corner of the frame, you could just see his hand holding a mug of something hot, steam rising. I saved the photo, set it as my phone background. People at the hardware store asked about Leo sometimes. How's your boy doing? Still acing all his classes? He's doing great, I'd say. Really thriving. It wasn't a lie. March brought rain and longer days. I started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done in years. The house felt too big, too empty, so I spent less time in it. I fixed the fence, repainted the garage, started volunteering at the community center on weekends, teaching basic home repair to whoever showed up. Leo texted more regularly now. Not every day, but often enough that I stopped panicking when I didn't hear from him for a week. Met someone who's teaching me to code properly, like actual development work, paying me to help on a project. What kind of project? App for local businesses. Nothing fancy, but good experience. You always wanted to learn that stuff. Yeah, better than learning it in a classroom. I didn't argue with him. He wasn't wrong. In April, he sent me a video call request out of nowhere. I was in the garage organizing tools when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. My hands were covered in grease from fixing my lawnmower, but I wiped them off and accepted the call. His face filled the screen. He looked different, older. His hair was longer, pushed back from his face. He had the beginning of actual stubble, not just teenage fuzz. His eyes were clearer, more confident. Hey, Dad. Hey. My voice came out rough. I cleared my throat. You look good. You too, he smiled. Lose weight? Started running. Turns out having an empty house gives you a lot of time to exercise. He laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, I bet. We talked for 40 minutes. He told me about the coding project, about the family he was tutoring for, about the tiny apartment he shared with 2 other people. He told me about the coffee shop where he spent most mornings, about the markets where he bought groceries, about learning to cook because eating out was too expensive. He sounded happy. When we finally hung up, I sat in the garage for a long time, just staring at the phone. Summer arrived. I sold the house. Not because I couldn't afford it, not because I needed a fresh start, but because sitting in that empty building every night, walking past Leo's closed bedroom door, felt like living in a museum dedicated to something that didn't exist anymore. I bought a smaller place closer to downtown. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 1 person. It was perfect. Leo called when I told him about the move. You sold the house? Yeah, too much space for 1 person. That was our house, Dad. I grew up there. I know, but you don't live there anymore, and I'm tired of pretending you're coming back. Silence. Then, I'm not coming back. I know. You're not mad? No, I meant it. I'm not mad. You should be. I lied to you for months. I faked grades. I just left. You did what you needed to do. I looked around the empty living room, boxes stacked against the walls. You're thriving out there. You've built something. Why would I be mad about that? Because you wanted me to go to college. I wanted you to succeed. You're succeeding, just not the way I expected. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. Thanks, Dad. For what? For the money. For not calling the cops. For not trying to drag me back. You're almost 18 now anyway. Even if I'd wanted to drag you back, the law wouldn't have let me for much longer. He laughed, but it was watery. True. Keep doing what you're doing, Leo. Just keep me updated, okay? Let me know you're alive. I will. Promise. 1 year later, November came around again. The air turned cold. Leaves scattered across the pavement. I was at the coffee shop near my apartment when my phone buzzed. Coming home for a visit, if that's okay. I read the message 3 times before responding. When? Next month. Staying for 2 weeks. Wanted to see you. See the old city. If you're cool with it, of course I'm cool with it. Let me know your flight details. He sent them immediately. I saved the date in my calendar, circled it in red pen, felt something warm spread through my chest. When I picked him up from the airport 3 weeks later, I almost didn't recognize him. He was taller, or maybe he just carried himself differently. Broader shoulders, actual stubble now, shaped into something intentional. He wore clothes I'd never seen before, a thick jacket that looked well worn, boots that had seen actual miles. But when he saw me waiting near baggage claim, his face split into a wide grin, the same grin he'd had when he was 7 years old and I'd surprised him with a trip to the science museum. Hey, Dad. Hey. We hugged. He smelled different, like coffee and cold air and something unfamiliar but good. You look good, I said. So do you. Seriously. Running's working for you. We drove back to my apartment. He was quiet in the car. looking out the window at the city he'd left a year ago. Feels weird being back, he said finally. Good weird or bad weird? Just weird. Like I'm visiting someone else's life. That's because you are. You built a different one. He glanced at me, then smiled. Yeah, I guess I did. We talked for hours that first night. I ordered pizza, his favorite, pepperoni, and extra cheese, and we sat in my small living room like we were old friends, catching up instead of father and son navigating a year of absence. He told me about the coding project that had turned into a full-time job, about the people he'd met, the places he'd seen. He showed me photos on his phone, cobblestone streets, small cafes, faces of friends whose names I'd never heard before. You ever regret it? I asked. Leaving? Yeah, he thought about it. No, not even once. Not even when it was hard? Especially not then. The hard parts were the best parts. They proved I could do it. I nodded. You could have done it here, you know. You didn't have to go halfway across the world. Yes, I did. He set down his pizza slice. If I'd stayed, I would have ended up at some state college taking classes I didn't care about because that's what you're supposed to do. I would have gotten some internship, then some entry-level job, then looked up one day at 35 and realized I'd never actually lived. I just existed in someone else's plan. My plan. Your plan was good, Dad. It's a good plan for a lot of people, just not for me. I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him about safety nets and long-term thinking and all the practical reasons why people follow traditional paths. But I didn't, because sitting across from me was living proof that there were other ways to succeed. You scared me, I said instead. Finding that backpack, realizing you were gone, that scared the hell out of me. I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize for living your life. Just next time you plan to disappear, give me a heads up. He laughed. Deal. On his last day before flying back, Leo asked if I still had the report card. The fake one? Yeah. I went to my office, really just a corner of the bedroom with a desk, and pulled it from a folder where I'd kept it. He looked at it for a long time, running his fingers over the printed A's. I spent 3 weeks learning how to forge this, he said quietly. Taught myself basic server penetration, studied the school's network architecture, figured out how to generate a document that looked exactly like their official reports. It was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done at that point. That's pretty advanced for a 17-year-old. I was motivated. He folded the paper and handed it back to me. You should burn it. Why? Because it's fake. Because I don't need it anymore. Because I'd rather you remember the real stuff I've done instead of the fake grades I made to fool you. I looked at the paper. The perfect A's. The lie that had bought him 2 months of silence. I'm keeping it, I said. Why? Because it's proof of what you're capable of. Not the lying part. The problem-solving part. You identified an obstacle. You developed a strategy. You executed it flawlessly. That's the kind of thinking most people never learn. He stared at me. You're proud of me for lying to you? I'm proud of you for being smart enough to know what you wanted and brave enough to go after it. The lying was just a tool. Not a great tool, but a tool. He shook his head, but he was smiling. You're weird, Dad. Takes one to know one. At the airport, we stood near security. Leo's backpack, different one now. Newer, actually designed for travel, hung from one shoulder. You'll be okay? He asked. I've been okay for a year. I think I'll manage. I mean, you're not lonely? Sometimes. But that's not your problem to solve. It kind of is. No, I put a hand on his shoulder. You did the hardest thing a kid can do. You left home and built a life. Now you get to live it. Don't waste energy worrying about me. I'm doing fine. You're sure? I'm sure. He hugged me then. Tight. The kind of hug that says everything words can't. Love you, Dad. Love you too. Stay safe. Keep me updated. I will. Promise. I watched him walk through security. Watched him put his bag on the conveyor belt. Watched him disappear into the crowd of travelers. And then I walked back to my car, drove home, and started planning my own trip. Because if my son could leave everything behind and build something new, why the hell couldn't I? I retired early from the hardware store, sold most of my stuff, bought a plane ticket. When I landed, Leo was waiting at arrivals with that same wide grin. You actually did it, he said. Learned from the best. We took the train to his apartment, bigger now, a one-bedroom he didn't have to share. He'd been promoted twice at the tech company. He was dating someone. He spoke the language fluently. He showed me around the city over the next week. The coffee shop where he spent his mornings. The market where he bought groceries. The office where he worked. The park where he ran. What do you think? He asked on my last day. I looked around, at the narrow streets and unfamiliar architecture, at the people speaking a language I didn't understand, at my son, confident and happy and thriving in a world I'd never imagined for him. I think, I said slowly, that I should have trusted you sooner. You trusted me when it mattered. I let you go. That's not the same as trusting you. Close enough. We ate dinner at a small restaurant, Leo knew, somewhere tucked down an alley I never would have found on my own. The food was good. The wine was better. We talked about his work, about my plans to travel more, about nothing and everything. When we said goodbye at the airport, I didn't feel sad. I felt proud. Not because my son had straight A's or a prestigious college acceptance or any of the things I thought mattered when I opened that report card 2 years ago, but because he'd looked at the life people expected him to want and said, "No thanks, I'll build my own," and then he'd actually done it. On the plane home, I pulled out my phone and sent him a message. "You were right. About all of it." His response came immediately. "Took you long enough to admit it." I smiled and put the phone away. Outside the window, the world stretched out below me, vast, complicated, full of possibilities I'd spent too many years being afraid to chase. Maybe it wasn't too late for me either. The flight attendant came by with drinks. I ordered a whiskey. Neat. To new beginnings. To trusting the people you love. To know what they need. To forged report cards and one-way tickets, and all the terrifying, beautiful ways people become themselves. I raised the glass to the window, to the world below, to my son somewhere out there living his life, and I drank.